Shannon. Appreciate you hopping on. This will be a real good one. So many different topics from media, NIL, college sports. But we were just talking before. Figured just start it. You got the Whoop. You got the colored orange one for On3, which is pretty fresh. But you said wearable for life. Curious your thoughts, because I'll give mine after. But I've gone that route as well.
Yeah, so this is my first time. So I guess about 4 months ago, I got one of these because I wanted to chart like sleep patterns and exercise, heart rate, all that kind of stuff. I'm not an Apple Watch guy. Never going to be one of those. And so it was really interesting just seeing the data, being in my mid 50s and stuff, try to be pretty active. And then about 3 weeks ago, I completely stopped drinking any alcohol for good, not for good, for that window of time. I wanted to chart it for about a month or two, measure all the data, pick up exercise or basketball pretty hard during that time. And it's been interesting to see. And I think it's great to have, fitness especially, it's great to have goals. And so I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, I did the triathlon last year, so everything was tracked, and it was crazy
Well,
to
you're
see.
legit.
Minus the 25 pounds I lost, everything else was pretty good. And
Yeah.
then I know you said you still play 3 days a week. For people who don't know, you were a pretty good college player as well. So it's always cool to see. You just can't lose it, right? Like it sticks in the blood forever.
Man, I took off for 10 years. I took off for 10 years after I got through playing. I played for a really intense coach, and it was a great program, but I took off for 10 years and then worked my way back. And then for the most part, over the last 15 years, I've been playing. It's a great group here in Nashville, all former college players. And it's probably going to keep me alive for another 10 or 15 years longer. So I can't give that up.
Add the Whoop, and you're in a good spot.
Yeah.
Curious though, over that time period, you've done a lot of cool things, obviously on the business side as well. And we could have a whole podcast for an hour just dissecting each of those. But give us a quick rundown of where you're at with On3, and just for people that don't have context, some of what was done before as well. And it's pretty cool. I think you're one of the, not to gas you up before I get in, but like you're one of the most underrated people in at least the sports business or sports space, I think, of multiple companies, which is cool.
Yeah, it froze up there. I appreciate that. On3 is going to be our third year. We'll have our third year anniversary in August. So really excited about that. And having been in sports media now for 29 years, I mean, this is kind of the last hurrah. And I just think it's an amazing opportunity because we're in a completely different time than we've ever been in. I mean, as it relates to college sports and media in general. So on the surface, I'm sure On3 looks a lot like some of the things we did at Rivals, which we can talk about, and things we did at 24/7. The intent and the real focus of the business, though, is very different. And as we enter this third full football season, a lot of that next phase of the business really is going to start being seen more.
Yeah, when you started, Rivals was the first one, right? 24/7 the second, On3 the third. Great name, by the way. How did you think about?
Third.
Yeah, what did you think about from the first one? Like, what was the goal? Where was the gap you saw? Where you're like, all right, this is a wide open space to build in.
Yeah, well, the Alliance Sports Rivals days was a newspaper feel. At that point in time, the newspapers were, starting to diminish their sports coverage, especially at the college level. And the fan site model really satisfied that demand. Communities, message boards were big. Subscription content was not in vogue. We actually did that, and people laughed at us, oh, you can make so much more money in ads, but obviously that was the right decision. And recruiting was just an area we thought we could own for source and attribution. But that business was actually more about covering your team. It was a license model. And so when Yahoo came along and wanting to acquire it, it was actually Jimmy Pitara, who's the CEO of ESPN now, great guy, really, really great vision. When he came around to acquire it, it made a lot of sense because I don't think what most people realized, that really wasn't an employee built model. That was kind of a licensed contractor model. And you could see search and social just around the corner, and national media we hadn't explored. And so for us to actually move that business forward, I would have had to torn it apart. It would have been, one of those deals where you don't go in, you don't renew those publishing agreements, and you just basically start rebuilding it for the next iteration of what media was going to be. And we looked at that. I mean, ESPN tried to buy it, NBC tried to buy it or buy big chunks of it to do a recap. And those were actually more lucrative deals for me personally and for our team, our investors. But we went ahead and sold the entire thing to Yahoo, quite simply because I didn't want to have to break it apart and start changing up the business plan that had been in place for almost a decade there.
Yeah, and so then you take a few years off. I'm sure there's a non-compete or something in there. Maybe you work for Yahoo. Then you see a gap, or it was just to build the better concept for 24/7, or what was then the impetus for the second one?
There were really kind of two things that we had learned that were a carry forward. We wanted to do a higher margin business. We wanted to build a business that we thought could scale much greater than this niche fan site business. And then we wanted to take advantage of search and social. And so where we had these lucrative, costly license agreement with these content providers, we knew the next X number of years, and it turned out to be many, distribution was going to be driven by search and social. So it didn't make a lot of sense paying these huge guarantees to content providers when we could actually go hire a few big known talents and then sprinkle a lot of J school, team based, national based around it. And so that was a more employee heavy model, but it was a much more lucrative profit model with 4X, 5X, 6X the amount of traffic. And so it was just enough subscription business for the fee income, the annuity based stuff, but massive scale. And so that business just reached so many more people than rivals. And it was really kind of our first foray into doing more of the national based content. So we did that for 20 years. Opportunity came along to sell that business to CBS Sports. And it actually was a hard decision, but why I was okay with it, unlike rivals, at 24/7, we did not feel we had built up a lot of really strong national talent. And so we thought when we did a deep dive on how the money is made and what the transaction was going to look like, it was very clear that the endemic audience pool wasn't strong enough at the time at 24/7, that most of the traffic audience was kind of rented from search and social. And so we still owned a couple other businesses, popculture.com and comicbook.com. So, we had another bite at the apple, so to speak. And we learned, I worked for a guy named Jeff Gratula who runs news and sports for CBS, who reported up to Jim Lanzone, who's now the CEO of Yahoo, and Mark Devilvois, who brilliant guys. Our group learned so much from working. I was at CBS for over 5 years. A lot of people, don't really give me the credit long enough for staying places, but I was there for almost 6 years, and I learned so much from those guys. Wouldn't change that experience for anything in the world.
Yeah. And what was, having done being one of the founders for so long, how was it jumping into the other side where usually it's flipped for a lot of people of, start more on the corporate side and then jump when they see an opportunity? Yeah. You were the reverse.
I didn't go there wanting anything, to be honest with you. So, I didn't go there ever pissed off. I didn't go there wanting to be promoted. I didn't want to go there. I went there for the sole purpose of I needed a mental break. That's 20 years or whatever you want to call it at that time. And I'm a worker. So I'm not, I'm a guy that puts all in. There's, nothing left in the tank. So I needed a reset. I was there to serve Jeff Gratula and in any way possible I can. I think we did some amazing things for CBS Sports. I think we did a lot of things for CBS Interactive that we were good at that maybe they were weaker on. So it was a good relationship, and I didn't go there. I didn't need money. I didn't go there expecting to be treated a certain way. I think it was the right place at the right time for me.
And then you take some of those learnings. NIL hits July 2021. I'm sure
Yeah.
you were probably thinking about it a little bit before. With, I know California legislation was before then, and there were some other things going on. And and I know you said there's a whole different side of this business and thought process. How was the beginning of this one really? This really
yeah,
started?
a few things were happening with me personally. I was at I was watching, I can't remember which Super Bowl it was, with Herb Street and a bunch of coaches at Kirk's house. Sorry, my Zoom here is out. And we started just talking about college sports media in general. And I had felt, and I kind of opposed this thought. I felt that there were basically kind of two buckets of media companies around college sports right now. There were your rights holders, which were, subjugating any kind of go out on their own for whoever their rights partners were. And then there were aggregators and only aggregators. I didn't feel that there was a real strong, authentic, pure media play. Everyone in the room kind of agreed. And the second thing was I felt that the next part of my career, this was going to be the best of me. I wanted to go build something that, I'd put 26 years in the business. I wanted to go do it right. This is it. This is it for me. And I'm not looking to retire. And you layer on the fact that, look at college sports. It was a conflation of every event in the world. You could see that the next 10 years is going to be the golden age of college sports. Coaches were making exorbitant fees. Rights fees are going through the roof. Viewership's at an all-time high. NIL is happening. Yep. Recruiting now was normal. Transfer portal, which I don't think was the thing at that point in time. Women's sports. This is the greatest time ever, and it made sense for me to go try to do it and do it right. One that I really feel proud of. And not that I don't feel proud of what we did at Rivals and 24/7 Sports, but this is a decade-long, multi-decade play for me. This is not we're not going to figure this one out in a short window of time. It's going to take a long time.
Yeah, and a big piece of this is the NIL component, which obviously we've seen a million little things pop up of people trying to take advantage of it. From a valuation standpoint, you guys have that, and there's been on both sides. You hear the good, you hear the bad.
Yeah.
I personally look at it from a business lens. I think it's the most genius thing ever, because anytime someone talks about money and NIL, you guys are hyperlinked. Yep. And the traffic and everything from just, Google putting you at the top because of all this, I'm blanking on the word that they give, but, I think it's genius. What was the thought process around that, or where did that idea spur from?
A couple of things. The first was we were calling BS on the NIL value that was being reported in the media. It was $500 million, $1 billion, and all this stuff, and we couldn't see it. We called a lot of the sports marketing firms, and we couldn't back count the deals to the number. And so we basically said, well, let's figure out what we think the number would be. We're not going to try to report, actual deal flow and say, Jane or John Doe, what's your earnings and that. But we want to say, what's the market? And let's extrapolate back, and we can get to that point. So we started out with a very simple concept that got us launched. We're very transparent about this. It was very easy to quantitatively value the value of an engaged follower, whether it was an Instagram follower, a TikTok follower, or a Twitter follower. Nashville has so many social media influencers. And so we did a lot of work to kind of come up with what a social follower was worth. Now, again, that's not much money, because most college athletes actually don't have strong social following. Some of the women's sports participants do, some of the women do. but that's not it. But that was our start. So we launched that first phase right out of the gate. Then as we did more and more work, I mean, it was phenomenal. The numbers were just, I felt from on the phone with the athletes, on the phone with the agents, on the phone with the schools, they were just grossly misstated. And I think they were misstated for this reason. Everyone, a lot of businesses, a lot of entrepreneurs were trying to raise capital on the future of NIL. Okay. And so in order to get the right valuations, you've got to like make NIL bigger than it is. So then we started basically just smiling and dialing, calling everyone we could find. Collectives started to rise, and we quickly realized that's now the norm. We realized it before I think anyone that 90% of the NIL money comes from the collectives pay for play. Okay, well, if you know that, the other parts, it's pretty easy to figure out. So what we did was we worked our 200 people. We worked the phones. We cross-checked the data, and we came up with what the schools were spending it all the way down. And then we did averages on what they were spending for position. So we could figure out that a quarterback was worth, X, and a defensive end was worth, X minus, and put value on positions. And we actually created the scale for the most part that the collectives and the schools have used. Now, why it's very accurate? It's very accurate because it's a summary of all that's going on in the collective marketplace, pay for play, which is 90% of the NIL space for college football and college basketball. Okay. Why I am most proud of it is that it's helped create efficiencies in the market. The Jaden Rashada story, you don't hear many of those now. And you don't hear many of those because athletes and their families go into the negotiations knowing what the valuation according to On3 looks like. The coach has it on the other end. And so there's a starting point to that negotiation around value. And so what we've done over time is that unless you're one of these big time influencers, all that information now is just private. It's actually in a private community for the athlete and the families paired for the coaches. And we're not selling that data. I guess you could call it our good works. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting, and brings up just another point around the future of college sports, right? And I guess we'll keep it to football and basketball. But in an ideal world, and this is why I'm sort of going off your NIL numbers, right? In the NFL, NBA, that's all public, right? That's what you created on the NIL side, which is needed. You need that. You need to know how much coaches are paid, athletes. That's how you create the equal market. What do you see the perfect world of college sports looking like from your lens, sitting on, all different sides at some point?
I don't think the perfect world will happen for maybe a decade. And as much as the Sankeys of the world are the people in the positions of power would like to run the association, the leagues, like a professional team, or like, a media exec runs a media company, or an engineer or a tech, CEO runs a tech company. There's so much bureaucracy in the world of higher ed and around college sports that I don't think the perfect scenario would ever really play out. Okay. So I don't think that's going to happen. It's going to be some hybrid where it looks kind of right, but it could be so much better. And I don't think we'll ever get there. Here are some factors to consider. The first factor is there's 170,000, I think, D1 athletes right now among all sports. By our numbers, there's about 9,000 of those athletes that can make a case that they are undervalued. Meaning, okay, if you took, let's just call it 10,000 for argument's sake. You got 160,000 on one bucket and you've got 10,000 on the other. The 160 over here are getting a better deal by not being employees, by getting tuition, room, board, perks, cost of living, tutoring, access, game tickets, you name it. That value, okay, call it 90,000 a year, 70,000 a year, $100,000 a year, The P4 numbers are closer to 120, 150,000 a year. Okay. Their value is less than they're receiving from that benefit for this $160,000 bucket a year. So that 160,000 D1 athletes, they're getting more than they're giving from a quantitative number perspective. The only question mark about value are these, high P4, high major basketball and football players, which come to about 8,200. And then you could make the case that the 80-20 rule, it's really only about 20% of that number are also crossing that. Okay. Now that group definitely deserves, even the 9,000, I guess, they definitely deserve a share of that pie. But that's those two sports, primarily that sport of football, also has to fund everything else. And so, so that is the problem. The first, it's going to have to be an acceptance by both the administration, the schools, the presidents, the coaches, that this group of 9,000, potentially 1,500, deserve a big, big bite of the apple. Okay. They are not getting their fair share. Okay. I don't know about this other group. That's up for the numbers. But this 160,000 over here, those athletes, they're going to want to jump in all the, class action, 6 other things. You're getting the better end of the deal here. And listen, I went to an NIL school, went to David Lipscomb, and I have a penchant now for small college athletics and what it means and development and all the things, and the fact that NIL or roster value or paying players is even conceived at that level is preposterous. If you can't even run athletics departments if that's really your ultimate goal at the small college level. So to answer your question, at some point in time, there's going to have to be, a new association for just football. It drives all the revenue for all the sports. There is more than enough money there, and there will continue to be, because it's got another 10 years. And if the NBA can get the package they're getting, which I don't even know what that product is today, college football is just beginning.
So what happens to some of the other sports? Is the NCAA still existing?
I think, yeah, it's a good point. I think that those rights fees are going to fund some of it. Some of them are going to go to club level. And don't forget, schools enrollments, and a lot of schools, drive enrollment through participation in those other sports. And so there's a lot of ways to make this work. It's just not going to work under the model that it has been. And it's going to take some time for all of the unintended consequences to surface from the actions. And my whole beef, listen, I am for the athlete heavily, and I'm also for the purity of the sport. My entire beef with the whole system, and I've been fairly outspoken, is that the NCAA went before Congress before it even proposed a solution. And it also went before Congress with an antitrust exemption, from the start. Forgive me for my past sins and give me an exemption from all my future sins. It doesn't work like that. And so I think over the next 3 years, we will get to a better place, and the process will reveal a lot of the unintended consequences that then we'll figure out what the real root of the problem is. There's more than enough money, though.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, NCAA, what's that, $1 billion a year from just the March Madness men's tournament. I remember at BU, the field hockey program was an expense line item under basketball. It's like, that's a big expense item. It's like, imagine you take that chunk, and it's not to say we deserve. I mean, I had more than a great experience, and like you said, I got a ton of a value out of it. But you take a $750, $1 million a year expense, and you have 15 players. I mean, that's a big game changer. Now BU's maybe not in the Patriot League, you're in the Big East for basketball or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. On the women's side, what are you seeing? I know you cover some of the women athletes. It seems like women's sports in general might have benefited the most from NIL, especially just following a Caitlin Clark and an Angel Reese, and the Cavenders and, countless names. We could go on and on.
We're investing there. If there are people to watch, if there's stories to tell, if there's, if there's subplots and, and villains and heroes and all the things, it's relatable and it's fun. It's fun entertainment. Watching with all due respect, watching a women's basketball game for just the, pure execution of it is difficult at times, when compared to the athleticism of the men's game. However, when you know who the players are and their stories and the subplots, it's incredibly interesting. The skill level, athleticism's also improved considerably over the last decade or so. So we're a big believer in it, and it's fun to watch. On3 is going to invest heavily in it, and it's one of those things where knowing the people and social media and advertising campaigns and NIL allow us to know more about the athlete, and that's gonna lift the entire enterprise.
Where do you see, I guess we'll go to like media trends. You've seen that shift over 20 years, and I guess that goes into a little bit of the On3 model itself. But right, you have the recurring, you have the subscription side, you have the advertising side, you have, what's that sort of look like? Where do you even see those models shifting? Because I'm sure you're not just building On3 as, hey, for college sports, you're also building it as this changing media world as well.
Yeah, I'm not really high and haven't been high on media for a couple of years. I think that, I think that, the media industry overall is incredibly, pressed at this point in time. You can look at valuations of media companies and what the platforms, and what big tech has done to media. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. And so, when we set out to build On3, we did it with the mindset that we want to produce the highest quality product possible, but we wanted to do it at a cost efficient way that, we wanted to reach scale, but we weren't going to chase scale, that we wanted to make money. And so, we're entering our third year, and I'm very proud of the product, but I can assure you, when we launched On3, if it was just to be a media company, there's no scenario we would have launched On3. And we launched On3, and we focused for the first 2 years solely on media because we knew we could build enough of something to use. But our intention with On3, and I've been very transparent about it, is to actually build a platform, to build a community, and the media part, is our way of delivering a message. But I'm not high on media right now. I don't think it's necessarily a great business. You have to have it though. To market, to tell your message. And I'm really excited about the next phase of On3 because I really think, we have a chance to do something that I've never done or that hasn't been done in our space.
Yeah, and I agree. It seems like media is top of the funnel. It's all shifting to this platform community.
Yeah.
Now, when you think of some other stuff maybe that you're building or you have added on, I know you guys allowed players to start claiming their profiles.
Yep.
What are some other areas you're looking or you're building or anything that you can say that, where you're trying to go?
Yeah, so the sole purpose or the primary purpose of On3 is under the brand On3 Elite, which we're trying to build a community, a social network for athletes. And so, there are 20,000 athletes that are either ranked stars or, college players, high major college players each year. There's 22 million athletes from the age of 13 to 17 in the United States. And so On3 has a unique opportunity in that we cover from a media perspective, the elite of the elites, and the ones that have that are making that journey, or are through that journey. And my experience in 20 years there's hardly an NFL player that we haven't, or NBA player that we haven't covered in some capacity. And so we want to build a platform basically from that age of 13 all the way to draft, for different types of services and connections based on where you are on your journey for the athlete and the parents. And so that's what I'm incredibly excited about. I really believe, and if you look at our funnel, our funnel is certainly the media business, getting them into this platform. But I really believe kind of the next big thing as it relates to sports, and you call it sports media, you call it platform data, it doesn't matter to me, or services, I think is around knowledge and learning and education. And so what On3 Elite really wants to try to solve for is bridging that gap of knowledge and education and learning and connections and relationships for athletes that are on their journey to being elite, and however they define elite. My definition of elite when I was growing up in Woodville, Alabama, I thought I was going to be Charles Barkley. Okay. The reality, that wasn't it. As I got more through the process there, I realized that my version of elite was completely different than Bobby Lee Hurts and Charles Barkley. But everyone has a version of elite. Mine was to be good enough to go to a great school, get a great education, and get school paid for so I didn't have to farm. And On3 Elite gives an opportunity to provide services and connections for both the athlete that's going to be first round draft pick, but also the 13-year-old that's starting that journey, trying to figure out what athletics is going to mean to them. And that is an unbelievable opportunity for us. It keeps me up at night. It's what I spend 90% of my time on. And I think we got a chance.
I love it. What is it? On3.com, socials, everything On3.
Yeah, it's On3 Elite and on3.com/elite. The emerging product, which is the piece that hits the 22 million, comes out in a month or two. The product that hits the elite stars has been out for about 6 months. It's well received. Parents are loving it. And it's a community, and, it's a community of knowledge. And, we're building masterclass videos right now. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins just addressed 28 of 32 5-stars and their parents. He sat there for 12 minutes telling them, this is things you need to be thinking about from someone who's been in your shoes. You could hear a pin drop. Okay. Those stories need to be told, and they need to be told in settings that are relatable to the parents and the athletes. And there's not a place for that. And On3 Elite, we think we can solve that, but not only can we solve it for the, Bryce, the Bryce Underwoods of the world, or the KJ Boldens or Sammy Browns. We think we can solve it for, the 13-year-old starting his athletic journey on what's next, then what's next, then what's next. And that's what keeps me up at night.
I love it. Where can people find you on socials or reach out? I know you're on Twitter. Do you use? Yeah,
that's it. I haven't checked my LinkedIn, and I updated it, I think 3 years ago, because I didn't know what would be said. Yeah, and I put On3, and I hadn't looked at it since. And goodness, I don't want to ever I don't want to be that accessible. In my perfect world, I could work out of a cave and just be left alone. But unfortunately, my job requires a little more out there than that. At Shannon Terry is on Twitter. That's it. And I post my thoughts every once in a while, like them or hate them. It doesn't matter to me. We got a plan here, and it's going to take
build something, right? You need.
Yeah. If there's not enough love and hate, you got to have it. It can't be everyone just likes it. It can't be everyone hates it, and you got to balance that.